March, April, May, and June. These months are just ordinary times of the year for many individuals. However, for high school seniors, this is a time of excitement and anticipation. For black seniors, on the other hand, this time is that much more stressful because the question, where do I go to college, becomes that much more important. Hello, my name is Jeffrey Drake, and I'm going to ask an old question from a new perspective. Are HBCUs still relevant in today's society? What role do they play? Here with me today, a recent alumni from Fisk University, Alexander Doyle. Doyle, how you doing today?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good, good.
I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Okay. Sir, what made you choose an HBCU?
In my high school, we had this application that went out to 30 different HBCUs. Fisk University was the first one to respond. I took that with a lot of pride and aspiration, and I filled out all my application work. They accepted me, and that's how I started my journey to HBCU.
Okay. And as you matriculated through the HBCU, what was your experience like at your HBCU?
My experience overall was a very pleasing one, and I'm glad I chose the HBCU. I got closer to the people of my kind, got to know them, what's it like life after high school, that they are pretty much doing things. And that paved the road for me to do the same thing. That I've seen juniors, sophomores, seniors, even grad students doing it. And as an incoming freshman, that inspired me to do it even more. So once I got here, I realized I can do this. There are other people that's doing it. There's people that want to do it just as much as me, and I want to be that same type of person as well. So my aspiration was seeing the people that was ahead of me, staying in college, doing it just as hard as I am.
Okay. So I guess this next question, you kind of already answered it. Would you recommend the HBCU to anybody?
I definitely would. I definitely recommend it. It's overall, you get a good feel of going towards higher education. It's like you're a big fish in a little pond after leaving high school, but at the same time you have the majority of people around you that's doing the same thing, so it gives you a more comfort level, knowing that the next person is struggling just as much as you, striving just as much as you. Whenever you need help, you can ask somebody because they're there. Their foots are in the same shoes, So it's like, hey, we all can do this together. I'm not here by myself. It gives me the extra foundation to go ahead and succeed in higher education.
Well, sir, thank you very much for answering my questions, and you have a nice day.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Here assisting me with my project, Jared Harper, a rising senior at Fisk University. So the question I have for you is, why did you choose an HBCU?
First off, I actually didn't initially come to Fisk University. I went to Loyola Marymount University, a Jesuit Catholic university in Los Angeles, California initially. But that school didn't quite work out, and Fisk University had been a school where my family had a long history here. I had a great aunt who had came here in the 20s. My parents came here in the 70s. My older brother even came here at the turn of the century. But when my older brother came, he wasn't feeling Fisk, and I wanted to stay in a warm climate, so I tried to go to school in California. But the school that I went to initially had a weak science. I got sick, and by the time I was feeling better, my sister had just graduated from Fisk University. And by that time, I was at the Los Angeles College Expo. I met Vice President Anthony Jones, and also a California recruiter there, and my sister was sitting there. So Jones was convinced with me actually talking to him for the second year in a row that I would probably be a good fit for the school, and so he signed me up, gave me a scholarship, and I was enrolled.
So far you're a rising senior. You've been here a year. So far, I guess I can't ask you this question yet, but are you satisfied with what you paid for so far?
Oh no, I'm very satisfied. I mean, the scholarships made it even out pretty well here, because Fisk University gives a lot of student scholarships. They gave me scholarships, and it's my understanding that as a school where a lot of the students receive Pell Grants, a significant number of them graduate within 4 to 6 years. I know I don't have to worry about that because I transferred in, but still, they do a lot to push you through, and that's another thing that I didn't feel at LMU. I didn't feel as much I didn't feel as much of people like pushing you
Motivation.
forward. Not just motivation, but people looking out for you. People look out for you a lot more here.
And with me here today, Jerome Morris, a rising sophomore at Fisk University. Jerome, how are you doing today?
I'm great.
Sir, if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions. Okay, the first question I want to ask is, what made you come from HBCU? What's your background? Just a little bit of your background.
Okay, so I'm from the Cayman Islands, and I guess if you had asked me 2 years earlier what's an HBCU, I probably would not be able to tell you what it is. But ever since I got accepted here, I've pretty much got piked by the school's tradition after reading up before getting here. And what had happened is that I came here and I met some interesting people, the educational standards, and pretty much the professors. They're like really motivated into you, and that pretty much made me realize that I truly belong here.
Okay. So I guess academically speaking, this for you is your best fit?
Yes, it is. As I said before, the professors not only motivate you, but they always teach you that you always get the concepts. And with your application, you pretty much get a great fit.
And with me today, Adriana Grant. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Miss, would you mind if I just ask you a couple of quick questions?
Not at all.
Okay. One question I have is, what made you want to go in HBCU?
Most of my family members, including my parents and my grandparents, all went to HBCUs growing up. So I knew early on in age about like the history of HBCUs, mostly like Fisk, TSU. I have friends and family who went to Spelman, and I eventually ended up going to Tuskegee University for the animal science program that they have there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that you're not at Tuskegee anymore. What motivates you to come to Fisk?
I went through a period of time where Tuskegee ended up not being for me. Emotionally, I had to leave and come home after my grandmother passed away. I wanted to be closer to my family. And then afterwards, I wanted to try my luck at Fisk and see what it had in store for me, because I already knew what Tuskegee had done for me. And I got involved in the art program, and it's been good ever since. Been doing pretty good.
Oh, okay. So far, based off when you were at Tuskegee coming to here, what values do you see in HBCU?
Oh, the history, definitely. Like, where you get to learn what happened through that campus. Like on Tuskegee's campus, the students actually had to build the school, and from like on the 4th of July is when they were open. And it's kind of interesting the connections of all the footsteps that passed through the school, like Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver, all the museums in the school. So even at Fisk, like going to the art galleries and learning about the Jubilee singers and all the history, it's one of the most things that I value coming from all the schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a rising senior, I guess, would you recommend an HBCU for a black student coming out of high school?
Yeah, well, I feel like because for me, I was raised in schools where I was like the only black person in my class, or it was me and my twin brother. So going through that period made me feel like I had a disconnect to my people. So definitely, if you're feeling like you need to get connected to people who are just like you, come to an HBCU, because they'll treat you like family, and I always appreciate that coming here.
Today, here with me today, a rising senior at Fisk University, Shannon Davies. Shannon, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Miss, if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions. The biggest question I have is, what made you choose an HBCU for your college education?
Well, the reason why I chose Fisk University specifically was because my sister was already attending the university, and we had arrived on the campus at the same time and felt very well welcomed. We felt like individuals. We we're able to see exactly where we fit in. We love the student to teacher ratio. We love that HBCUs would give us an opportunity to grow without being worried about having to look at our cultural background as so different, but we would be accepted and welcomed, and we got to know more about our people. We were raised among mostly Caucasian people, and so it gave us an opportunity to see something a little different and appreciate who we were.
Okay. You kind of already went into this, but what were some other benefits that you saw coming into FISC?
Some benefits were, I really liked seeing our diversity. A lot of people think that African Americans and colored people don't have as much diversity as you would have at a predominantly white institution. But I enjoyed the diversity. I enjoyed, even though people came from different states, how actually different we were, and just your cultural background could be so diverse.
Okay. Well, you as a rising senior, you're about to graduate.
Yes.
So far, how was your experience up to this point?
Oh man, I always tell people that FISC is what you make of it. It's been fantastic. But a big thing is that you have to seize the opportunities that are offered you. I've enjoyed my experience from the start to the finish.
Here with me today, a close friend of mine, Damon Clemens. Damon, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. How are you, bro?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm doing pretty good. Hey, would you mind if I just ask you a couple of quick questions?
Go ahead.
Okay. One question I want to ask you is, what made you go to HBCU or FISC in general?
Well, going to FISC is mainly financial reasons, for real. Basically, like, the background came from. Like, it provided a financial aid enough to make me go here. I really didn't know much about HBCUs or whatever, so I just chose FISC for financial reasons.
Okay. So when you got here, did your view of HBCUs change, or was it just mainly based off the financial?
When I got here, like, I learned a lot about HBCUs and everything. I took, I guess, pride in African American history more and everything, and learned a lot more history behind it and all that stuff.
So you're a rising senior. So far, how was your experience here at FISC, at your HBCU?
I think it's been quite a journey, quite a very up and down journey, but very a needed one. Because I learned a lot, like, from not judging people and accepting of diversity, even though it's like mainly like African Americans, accepting the different perspectives around the country and everything made my views change of the world a little bit.
So as a up-and-coming alum in a year's time, would you recommend HBCU to like your brother or any person like that?
I would, but I wouldn't say, I would encourage people to do what you think is best for you in your future, and like what you think will be benefit you more so. It would be cool to go out, like, you know, for HBCU and everything, but do what's best for you.
I think at the time that I was applying to school, more than wanting to go to an HBCU, I think I wanted to go to FISC in particular, because I was familiar with it. I mean, I had been to the campus before. My mom graduated from FISC, and it was something that was just very, very familiar to me, I'm going to say. And then I feel like after I decided I wanted to go to FISC, and after I was already there, and especially when I started to meet people from other HBCUs and visit other campuses, is when I kind of started to get into the mood of, I'm glad I went to an HBCU rather than just, I'm glad I went to FISC. So it's kind of something that developed just out of wanting to go to FISC and being familiar with it. I think now that I'm no longer there, and compared to the experience that I'm having at my current institution, I would rank it really highly, especially the Department that I was in the English department, and then just looking back on the atmosphere, I think I appreciate it more now that I'm not in that atmosphere, that I'm not at an HBCU. I'm not even at an institution that really has a lot of students of color, let alone black students. So I would definitely rank it very highly now that I have like the experience to contrast it. I think I definitely would. I mean, like with me, I think that whatever college or university you choose, I think you should really have finances in mind. And I mean, I know Fisk does give out a lot of scholarships and financial aid, but I think you should first make sure that your finances are in order, just because student debt is getting harder and harder to deal with. But I think if you can, you should, especially for people, if you have the opportunity to go out of state. I mean, most HBCUs are on the East Coast or in the Southeast, so definitely to have that experience of leaving home and then being an HBCU, especially if you're someone who maybe didn't have an opportunity to grow up around a lot of Black people, or maybe just even be in that setting where you get to see like professors who are Black, or maybe ones who are not Black but are still very, very supportive of the experience. I think it's something, I'm going to say, if you can, you should do it, as long as, you know, that has your future interests in mind.
And here with me today, the legendary Mr. Berry. Mr. Berry, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing just great. And yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Sir, I have a couple of quick questions, if you don't mind me asking.
My pleasure.
Okay, one question I have as a administrator, well, actually more so as an alum, what made you want to go to an HBCU?
Well, growing up in the post-Brown versus Board of Education, we didn't have that many options growing up in the South. So we had counselors that were products of an HBCU, and they encouraged us to go to an HBCU because it was good enough for them, it was good enough for us. Their goal was to get that education regardless where you went, but they were products because they were truly in an era of segregation, and they were looking out for our welfare. So this is why I attended one, because we had mentors that, you know, just looked out for us.
Okay, well, another question I have is, how long have you been an administrator at HBCU?
I would say about 22 years.
Oh, okay. And I guess what are the issues facing HBCUs nowadays?
Finances, enrollment, and accountability. These are alumni not giving back like they could and should give back. And the key in the survival of an HBCU will be friends, freshmen, and funds. But I think that we're still relevant today. But in order for an HBCU to continue survival, it's going to take everybody working hand in hand, if it's from corporate America to the alums and the students themselves.
And here with me, the alum turned staff member, Stuart Watts. The reason why I actually came to this. Stuart, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Stuart, I just have a couple of quick questions for you. Would you mind?
Fire away.
Okay. Stuart, what made you want to go to an HBCU, let alone Fisk?
I wanted to go to a HBCU because I originally am from Detroit, where it's 90% African American, and I had the luxury of actually going to a boarding school where that dwindled down to where it was maybe 6% African American, in an area where I was around people that came from affluent backgrounds. They just didn't have that exposure to African American history and African American culture. And because of my family history at Fisk University and because of my knowledge of HBCUs, I wanted to get back in an environment where I was around people that looked like me, that had the same aspirations, same type of goals, and Fisk University fit that mold perfectly for me.
Oh, okay. So after you graduated, you became a part of the staff, and I guess going from staff to your current title, which is?
Assistant Director of Residence Life and Campus Services.
Okay. Well, I guess one question I have to ask is, what are the issues that HBCUs face now, based off what you've seen?
HBCUs always had that question of relevance. People are always asking us, why do we need HBCUs? They said segregation is over, but I guess now in 2015, they're more relevant than they ever were. You have police brutality, you have the issue with the Confederate flag being flown over government statues and monuments, and it's just this cultural awareness. And with HBCUs, there's a safe haven where people of color, not just African Americans, can actually learn. They can, a lot of them are first generation, so some of them, they're doing this to take care of their families. They're doing this to better their education. But at HBCU, they get that culture experience that I just don't think you can get at PWI.
Well, sir, thank you very much for your responses. I very much appreciate it. And I appreciate you recruiting me to come to Fisk University.
There's no problem. Thank you for having me. And I know you're going to do great.
Thank you. You have a nice day. After interviewing everyone, I wanted to give my personal HBCU and why I came to Fisk. Since I was a little kid, my mother always wanted me to go to an HBCU. My sister ended up going to Spelman, and my mom had her heart set on sending me to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. But by the time of my senior year, I had different schools in mind. I actually only wanted to stay in California. All I had applied to were UCs and Cal States. But around January, I went to the Black College Expo and I saw Fisk, their little booth. I saw VP Jones there. He greeted me, gave me an application, sent it back. Later on, in about June, I had received a call from a recruiter. His name was Stuart Watts. The fact that I got a phone call from the school telling me how much financial aid they had given me, it gave me a change of heart. It just hands down, it just made me want to at least look further into it. So after a little bit more research, I said, you know what? If I don't like it, I can always transfer back home, no problem. So I came August 16, 2012, and since coming, it's definitely been a journey. I've seen change on this campus, I've seen change in myself, and I've seen just change in just the community. HBCUs are still relevant to today's society. And the decision I made, I wouldn't change it for anything else in the world. Since coming here, people have cared for me. People have, tried to go out their way to make sure that I'm taken care of. I never had that feeling at any other school that I was at or visited. That's why I just think HBCUs are beyond relevant. They're needed. They're just, to me, they were the best choice for me. But that's my personal decision.